Today we're revisiting a watch that's not just become part of my collection, but part of my personal journey. This is my newest addition. This is the Santos de Cartier in a medium size. If you followed me for a while, you know that this isn't my first encounter with this iconic watch. It's actually a repurchase, a reunion with an old friend. After experiencing several of Cartier's finest, the Tank Must, the Tank American, and even my wife's timeless Tank Française here, I found myself drawn back to the Santos. And not just the Santos Dumont, but in this case, the Santos de Cartier. Now, sometimes you part with a watch and you don't fully appreciate it until it's gone. And other times you return to a watch and the watch hasn't changed, but you have, or your lifestyle has. And so it fits better with your life now. So let's talk about the Santos de Cartier, which has to be one of the most popular watches out there right now and why I enjoy it so much. And then obviously some of the things that I don't like. I also want to add later in this, I'm going to talk about different straps, replaceable straps for this, because those can be a little difficult to find and where I've found them so far. If you're out there buying a watch for the first time, all the Rolex and Tudor models, a few Grand Seiko models, and this, the Santos de Cartier, are probably the top on that list. Now first, let's talk about the Santos bracelet, because the bracelet, it's honestly one of Cartier's standout features on this specific watch. It highlights a quick release system that's nothing short of genius. Changing a strap from a watch takes mere seconds. No tools, no frustration, just effortless versatility. Each link is also independently removable with a tiny push button mechanism, meaning that resizing the watch is a breeze. And honestly, you wonder why every brand isn't doing something similar to this. There are different brands that are coming close, but not quite the exact same. Now, there's still some things I don't like about this bracelet. One of those has to be the fact that there aren't like multi-sized links, which I think aesthetically would look weird, but it means that like finding the right fit is really difficult. These links are relatively small, but they're not small enough for my wrist for whatever reason. So it's either a little loose or it's really tight. And that's just one of the downsides with a metal bracelet in general, when you don't have any adjustability or fine-tune adjustability, is that you typically will end up with a fit that isn't perfect, especially depending on the time of year, how swollen your wrist is that moment. So that's one of the downsides about this. Now, obviously the interchangeability here I mentioned is this press button on the bottom side of the bracelet. You push in on it. This little spring pushes in on this part that kind of swings out, and that part that swings out is what holds it in place. So when it's swung out, it's holding it in place. When you push on the button, it pulls it in and allows the bracelet then to be released from the watch. Everything releases down away from the head of the watch, which makes sense because as it's sitting on your wrist, you're always going to be pushing or adding force up to the bracelet, which makes it less likely this is going to fall off, all of which I really like. That is a little different than IWC's system, for example, where you actually press in on the bottom and lift it up and out. This one, you push in on the bottom and pull it down and out. There are preferences between the two, but obviously the downside with this sort of adjustment is there is no spring bar at all. The IWC does have a spring bar system where it snaps onto a spring bar, so you can use traditional straps on the watch like that. This watch, you can't use any spring bars at all because there are no holes for the spring bars to sit in. It's just these slots that kind of hold the sides of the actual strap mechanism itself. So that's a major downside about this watch. While the bracelet itself is really nice and really well made, you don't have the option to do anything except use this sort of interchange system, which is why replaceable straps are difficult. Now let's go over the general specs of this watch. If you are not familiar with the Santos de Cartier, it is a 35mm medium model. They do sell it also in a small model and a large model. The large is pretty popular with a lot of people these days just because people like larger looking watches. I think the medium is a perfect fit. Having worn the Tank Must large and Solo large, and it was a little small for me, and then wearing the XL version of the standard Tank, it felt too big. I am a little hit or miss on finding the perfect size. The American always felt a little too big. It was the large model as well. The medium of the Santos de Cartier just is, I think, the perfect size for this model watch. It does have a lot of metal because of that big bezel, and so the dial itself is a little smaller, which means that it has a physically large presence with all the metal, but because the dial is a little smaller, it makes it look a little more subdued, a little dressier, and a little nicer. All in all, I think the package is perfect in terms of sizing. You do have a cabochon here on the side. This is a automatic movement, which is nice because on your 3000 or 4000 and less Cartiers, you are getting a quartz movement. I obviously prefer automatic anytime I possibly can buy one. Sorry to interrupt. As a quick note, a lot of you guys watch my videos and enjoy them or tell me that you enjoy them, and I really, really, really appreciate that. It's been so fun to make these videos over the last 3 years. If you would do me a favor and hit subscribe down below, it's a metric that's watched by a lot of people. It helps me get access to a lot of these different watches to be able to film them and hopefully bring as unbiased a review as possible to you guys. So if you could do me that favor, I would be very, very appreciative. Thanks a lot, guys, for watching. This movement's been pretty reliable for me. It's lost a little bit of time. The watch does have a relatively short power reserve, which means that it does die pretty often. So I do have to top it up or wear it almost daily in order to keep it running. I think that the aesthetic, though, of this watch is why you buy this watch. Wearability and aesthetics. Now, my favorite aspect on this watch has to be the wearability. It is slim and this nice refined profile. Now, having worn, again, the American and the Solos before, this watch fits just like any Cartier would. It's designed to be mainly a dress watch. It's designed to be really hug your wrist, be really thin. This is under 9mm thick, and so it just slips effortlessly under any cuff or long sleeve shirt or sweater or anything whatsoever. Not that I typically have my cuffs down. It's super easy to wear. And again, I think it's also a super nice looking watch. This is probably the most versatile watch that you could probably buy for an everyday daily watch. I've seen a lot of different YouTubers also say the same thing. The Explorer from Rolex or the Datejust are also good competitors, but a watch like this, I feel like, is that little extra bit of dressiness because of the slim nature. While a Datejust is obviously looks more like a dressy watch than, say, something like the Explorer, it's a little thicker in 36mm than this Santos, and as a result, I think it tends to look a little bulkier and a little more sporty. This one looks mostly dressy, if not entirely dressy, but it has the capacity with 100-meter water resistance to be sporty, I suppose. It definitely leans heavier dress. If you're someone that works with your hands a lot, like this is probably not a true daily watch. But for what most people do here in the United States and that buy watches like this, you're working in some service industry or a general white collar job, you could probably buy a watch like this and get away with wearing it almost everywhere, doing almost anything, including weddings, with no issue whatsoever. And I think that's why this has been a popular watch. And the other reason this is a popular watch has to be the name on the watch itself. It says Cartier. Cartier has a fantastic brand reputation across all spectrums. They are probably the Rolex of jewelry for most of America that I'm aware of, right? Obviously, you have your Van Cleef Arpels, you have your Louis Vuittons, you have your Hermes, you have all these other big brands, Tiffany. But Cartier, I think, has an allure to it still that a lot of people feel. And I think that draws people to this watch just as much as people are drawn to Rolex. And I think that that obviously is doing a lot of the heavy lifting on a watch like this as well. For details in terms of dial decoration, you have nothing. This does not have a guilloche pattern on it like you have with the old Tank Française. I don't think the new model has guillocheing, but this is an older version of the Française that my wife has that has a guilloche pattern on it. This has nothing. It's just a silver toned dial. And then you just have printed Cartier and printed numerals. Nothing raised, no lume. You do have a seconds hand or running seconds hand. So this again is why I think it doesn't look very sports oriented because it doesn't even have lume anywhere near it. So it's hard to define it as a sports watch, but a lot of people wear it as sort of a bleed over. Now, along with that brand recognition, Cartier does often get criticized as being all brand for the price. And I think there's some truth to that with certain models. However, the Santos Medium, I think, generally feels like a decent value. You get exceptional build quality, you get unmatched elegance, and I think you get real heritage. Cartier's been around a long time. And at the price point, it's decently competitive with other steel sports watches. It's not inexpensive, sure, but compared to some of its competitors, like Rolex's Datejust, which are pushing 10,000, even Grand Seiko, which is now 7,000 plus for most of their standard models, this watch is the same price. So I do think that it's pretty competitive with the landscape because it has that automatic movement inside it. And because, again, the brand recognition and the styling and elegance of the watch. So talk about replacement straps. Aftermarket straps are an option. Now the watch will ship if you buy it new or you buy it from a reseller who still has everything. It'll ship with the original bracelet. It'll also ship with a brown leather strap, which I think is really nice. The brown leather strap has with it a clasp. Now the older variant I owned first, the clasp wasn't really good at like disengaging for whatever reason. I don't know why, but it wasn't that nice to actually operate. I think I had to pull it open if I remember correctly and push it closed, which is similar to how you have to work the bracelet here on my wife's Cartier. You just kind of pull against it and it's friction fit. The current version, or whatever version I have here, this model was made in 2020, and so it has this clasp where you actually press in on the sides and it lifts out. So the clasp, if you have the updated one where it's press button deployment, then you're gonna have a lot nicer experience with that. Point is, finding replaceable straps isn't the easiest thing in the world because of the fact that it's using this proprietary mechanism. Now there are a couple different resellers that I have seen. The two big ones I've seen are D-Lugs. They're an option, they're expensive. They have a good reputation, but the straps are really expensive, like 200 bucks for a strap, if I remember correctly. These are Helvetis straps, Swiss company. This is just like a rubber strap, basically, that is a little thin, but it allows you to have the same sort of color that I think is really popular from the D-Lug site. So you have this light blue strap that you can put on the watch. The mechanism is pretty good. I would say it catches a little more, so you do have to push a little harder to actually get it to depress, but the mechanism seems to work correctly. It does snap in, it does fit snugly, you can't pull it out. So there were no issues with that. The other strap I got from Helvetis is actually this leather strap here, which I really like. It's just a classic smooth leather, but it has no holes punched in it anywhere. And so it actually has a clasp here where you fold the strap in on each side, here and here. Apparently this is something that's done on high-end watches a lot, and even Cartiers. I've never seen a strap that kind of operates like this, where it just folds in on both sides like that. But this is how Helvetis sells their strap, and then it snaps in. This clasp I feel like was hit or miss. I bought 3 versions of this clasp, one for each of these 2 rubber ones, and then one here I got after with this leather one. This one is perfect, like it snaps in, it opens up, everything's fine. It's a little loose. I think like it's not the best fit, and so sometimes it pops open. The other 2 that I bought from Helvetis, like you could not pry them open if you tried. So it is cheaper. On the clasp side, at least, you are gonna lose a little. And I haven't actually worn the D-Lugs or tested them to see how nice that mechanism is, but these have been really good. And again, for the price, it's really hard to deny using these alternative straps. So if you're out there and you have a Santos de Cartier and you're interested in straps, I really like these. For the price, I think they're actually quite nice. They didn't sponsor this. I bought all of these straps with my own money, but if you're interested, I left their standard link down below. One thing to note on the negatives is this watch is not shy about picking up scratches, especially here on this polished bezel on the front. If you're someone who insists on having a pristine watch, prepare yourself mentally, because this bezel picks up scratches with daily wear like nobody's business. Personally, I've learned to kind of just deal with the scratches. They don't bother me a huge amount. They do bother me a little bit, depending on how deep and how noticeable the scratch is. But a lot of people say it's just a mark of a memory. It's a mark of the journey. I think that that's kind of bogus. Like, I like having on a watch like this, if you're gonna wear a dress watch, you want it to look nice. And so I think, while yes, some scratches you can kind of deal with, I'm someone personally who, when I'm wearing a watch that's supposed to be on a nice occasion, wants to have a watch with less scratches on it. I'm someone who would probably swap this bezel out for a brand new bezel at some point. So let's say I scratch this like crazy. I can get it polished a couple times, but I'm probably gonna buy 1 or 2 replacement bezels for this, because it's just 8 screws holding a bezel down. So I can just take the bezel off and put a different one on at some point in time if I do want to do something like that. So I am also someone who tinkers with these watches. You may not be someone who likes doing that, but the bezel does pick up a lot of scratches. I will eventually probably refinish and then eventually replace this bezel, but that's just, again, personal preference. I want it to look nicer. I don't care about not polishing my watches. You guys have heard me talk about that before. Now, speaking of the screws that are holding this bezel down, actually within the first 2 weeks of me owning this, I actually managed to lose one of the screws out of this bezel For whatever reason, that screw wasn't in all the way or had slowly loosened over time. It is a 5-year-old watch, and so it eventually fell out at some point, not when I was paying attention. So I had to go buy an aftermarket screw to put in there. It's a simple screw. It's not something you could buy on McMaster-Carr, but you can source these screws on eBay for like 10 bucks or 20 bucks or something like that, which is really expensive for a tiny screw, but is what it is. And then I found that replacement, it looked great. So that is something to note. If you have this watch, you might want to tighten the screws on the top of this bezel. So the big question is, why did I return to the Santos? After owning these different tank models, the American, again, the Francaise, the Tank Solo, the Tank Must, I think tastes and priorities evolve. Initially, the Santos felt a little too nice for everyday wear for me. At the time, I was also installing things all day. I was more of a construction worker for my company than an actual owner or manager. And I think that, you know, that obviously didn't fit with my day-to-day life. Nowadays, I am less in the plant than I am in the office, and so I can wear this more often. I don't go to major dressy occasions. This is about as nice as I will get most of the time. So this fits with the styling of what I'll wear most of the time day to day now, and I think that's a huge piece of why. I do think this is versatile enough for, you know, casual outfits, and I also think it's polished enough for dressier occasions. And I think that for that reason, it fits more of me at this point in my life. And I think that that is also going to happen as I age and I start to look at potentially wearing watches that have more gold in them. I haven't traditionally worn anything with gold in it because, you know, at my age, it didn't really make sense, I think. I didn't feel like there was enough success in my life to merit wearing a gold watch. I think a gold watch is more of an older man who's been through a lot and who has achieved these things in his life. And so gold, I think, is an element of that sort of deserved luxury, I suppose, whereas steel is a little bit more subdued and doesn't sort of call attention to itself or make me seem brash, I suppose. This is just my own perception of myself, but I think that this is starting to fit more with how I would wear things these days or how I want to wear things these days. I think that's why I came back. That, and the other reason is because I exhausted all the other options. Like most watch collectors, I bought a watch. I bought this watch, the Santos, first, but I was still thinking about the standard Tank Must. I was also still thinking about the Cartier Tank American. So though they were in the back of my mind, and so once I've now worn those other watches and experienced them, I know that they're not for me. And so it's a lot easier to come back to this and know that this is better for me than those other watches. And so because it has less competition from that standpoint, it's much easier to say this is the right watch for me. I don't know if you guys have had that experience of eliminating other watches, and so you go back to the first watch you bought, but I think that also plays into it. Now for me, this revisit has been an enlightening experience. It's reminding me that watch collecting isn't just about acquiring a brand new piece. It's also about rediscovering and reconnecting with watches that were past favorites. You know, I've been thinking about a Zin 104 for probably the last year and a half. You know, sometimes our tastes circle back around and the watch that we once let go becomes an irreplaceable part of our collection because it has this nostalgia element kind of wrapped in it as well. The Santos de Cartier medium isn't perfect. It's a scratch-prone bezel. It's got a tricky aftermarket strap compatibility, and I can attest to that. But it's got a charm and a versatility and a sheer wearability, I think, that overshadow any minor drawbacks. I'm genuinely thrilled to have it back in my collection, and this time I think it actually feels like mine. So anyway, that's my journey with the Santos, but now I want to hear from you guys. Have you repurchased a watch that you previously have let go? What do you think of the Santos de Cartier? I know it's a very popular watch, and so that draws people away as well. Let me know your stories in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.